Thanks.
Hey, we're live.
Hi, everyone. It's Michelle.
And I'm Tracy. And welcome to our HR Rebooted podcast. And today I'm so excited to have Tiffany Castano. And hopefully I pronounced that correctly.
Perfect.
Is that right? Okay.
Perfect.
People get my name wrong all the time, so I'm particularly sensitive to that. Welcome, Tiffany. Tell us a little bit about you and what
Thank you. Thanks. So this is great to be here. I appreciate being here with a fellow HR team. So thanks for having me on this snowy day in Pittsburgh. So I am Tiffany Castano, as Tracy said, and I'm CEO and founder of SEFR, which is an acronym for Cultivating the Evolution of Professional HR, because I love what I do. And I've been doing this for about 13 years. So now I launched my firm in the middle of a pandemic in May, and I support small to medium enterprises, helping them build their infrastructure, their teams, their brands, and their cultures. I'm really passionate about culture work.
I love that. And I love that you always say what the acronym stands for. And every time I hear you speak, you do that. And I think that's really important because it's a really great acronym. So you mentioned culture. And so tell us, what do you think of when you think of culture? I'm not going to ask you how to define it because I hate that. It's impossible to define, but maybe you can. But what do you think of when you think of culture, and why is this something you're so passionate about? And did this help form your company or make you decide to form your company?
Yes, so I'll start with the last one, but that's definitely a yes. And it is a large part of my why, because not having worked in, what I deem to be safe cultures, I think with psychological safety is a huge piece for me. And I want people to be able to show up as their whole selves at work and to be able to share, whether that's managing up, having a difference of opinion, feeling safe that even if they share ideas that no one's going to steal them, because that's happened to me before too. So just cultures where it's really embedded into the fiber. So a lot of times you'll see, oh, we have an EEO statement, or, we've hired a woman, or we've hired a person of color. And the rest of that doesn't always translate into the culture, into the organizational fiber itself. And that's really been a struggle for me as I've moved throughout my own career. And my why is really helping to build stronger leaders, build stronger organizations and brands, so that people don't have to go through that, and that they show up to work the way they do, and they can leave as a whole person on the way and not be destroyed along the way in that process.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. And I think that culture's so important. And this question gets asked a lot too, but I like it. But who do you think owns culture?
So it's really, that should come from the top, from senior leadership, from C-suite on down. Now, of course, organizations, employees will own that too. It's everybody's responsibility, really, because the culture, people, that's why I think it gets so hard to define, because it's really all of our responsibility, and it's a whole lot of things. It's everything from the time someone comes in the door to the time they may leave the organization, and whatever happens in between. So it's access to training and promotions. It's how we show up on our teams, how we collaborate across the organization. It's a whole bunch of stuff. But if that's not supported at the top, that is felt throughout the organization. I, as an HR person, haven't always been supported by the C-suite or my manager or middle management. And that's become an issue, because you get this disjointed culture where nobody knows what they're doing, or part of the organization is thriving and the other part is on the struggle bus. So it's really important to keep those things aligned. And that only really happens if there's buy-in from the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I had an employee once say to me, I'm this way at work, but I'm a different person at home. And I was really shocked, and I felt very naive because I was shocked by it, because I always felt comfortable just being who I am. But I realized that it's not the same across the organization. And we've talked a lot about the employee experience and really trying to work through the organization to make the employee experience customized, so that everybody feels like they can come to work and be who they are, regardless of anything they bring to the table. How do you do that? What are you doing to help customize the culture so that everybody feels like they're integrated and belong?
For me, one of the cool things that I do with my clients that is a lot of fun because it's a co-created process. It's not just me like, this is what you should do, company. I know everything. It's really cool to work through that process together. And so what I do is I do ask, like, what is your mission, vision, and values? And we kind of start there. I also assess whether I'm asking direct questions or I'm just kind of observing as an HR practitioner what the leadership team looks like. Are they aligned? Am I hearing messages that don't from one, maybe the CEO down to the CFO that don't align? And so I'm picking up on those things. But it's also just seeing where those folks are at on their journey and asking like, okay, here's where you are. Excuse me, my throat's really froggy this morning. Here's where you are on your journey. Here's where you're trying to go. And, what are the gaps that I've identified in between, or what are the gaps that you've even identified? And then we work from there to create a roadmap. So we talk about onboarding, we talk about leadership and what that particular leader's brand is. And if it's multiple leaders, we talk about all of their brands to see how that connects with their team. We talk about what they're doing for performance management, if they're doing it, how often they're doing it, and what their team's aspirations are. And the number of times I've found out that people don't even really know what their team aspires to is shocking. And so that happens, but I really try to say, connect it into a strategy, because I've seen where it's not. And then your team, how can you have a high performing team if you don't pour into them and you're not giving them what they need, or you don't even know what they need? So to me, it's that whole picture of connecting into the larger organizational strategy, but also knowing individually and collectively enough about your team so that you can see them thrive.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we use PI. I know we've talked about that before. So we use PI to help us align that business strategy, the people strategy with the business strategy. I wanted to touch on a couple of things both you and Michelle said. So Michelle and I have talked a fair amount about this, I think, but where she felt like she could always be herself, right? I didn't feel that way. So I definitely did not, and maybe not until this current job, and maybe not even initially there. And I think a lot of that for me, and everybody's a little bit different, was self-awareness. So the self-awareness of myself as a person, particularly my self-awareness as a leader. And I think I tend to look at things through that lens and tend to, if we're seeing an issue with someone on a team or a particular team, I look at that. Is that leader self-aware? Are they conscious of what they're putting out? Are they willing to look at themselves? And so wondering if you've dealt with that at all, or if you're aligned with that, or if you're going to totally tell me that's ridiculous. So.
That happens a lot too. And that is another, that's part of that why I really feel strongly about helping. One of the roles that I had in HR, which was a brand new industry for me. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what I've gotten myself into. But we had a lot of leaders who were struggling with that. And so the organization itself had identified that we really need to build leadership capabilities. And that for me was like this fun journey. And so I've been on that journey ever since of, wow, yeah, leadership does play a huge role in this. And it's really when I honed into like the responsibilities on both sides of employer and employee, and just helping these leaders along their way, because it's not always intentional that I say a lot that leaders sometimes got left behind in the organization because their leader's busy. They haven't had mentorship. They were in an IC role, and now they're in this leadership role, and they're like overwhelmed. They don't even know what they don't know, and no one has time to help support them on the journey. And so for me, that's been something that I've been very passionate about, because our leaders deserve to be, we can't put someone in a role and set them up to fail because we don't mentor them along the way. And so there is this piece of building out these capabilities. And part of that is helping them just be self-aware, helping them maybe see things in a different light, or that they weren't able to see before. And I found that most leaders are hungry for that. They're hungry for that knowledge, and they're grateful when you share that. So that's been really fun.
We've tended to do that as a company, and we've got almost 50 locations. And so Bob or Susie or Tim or whoever it is, right? You're the best counter salesperson. You're the best outside salesperson. You're the best warehouse person. Why don't you, here you go, here's 10, 12, 15, 20 people. Why don't you just manage them? And by the way, do your whole job, right? So we've tended to do that without giving the support. We changed that a few years ago, and now we're really at an inflection point as a business where we're looking at people leaders first. Can you lead people? And are we giving you all of the tools that you need? And are you willing to use those tools? And are you willing to lead people first? And so that's a big shift for us, but it's hard. It's hard. And you're right. It is not your employees' fault if they don't succeed and they don't have the tools that they need.
I heard something really cool yesterday in Clubhouse, actually. Angelica and I do a lot of collaboration with her as well. And she's an executive leadership coach. And she ran a room yesterday on like emotions and the productive leader. And one of the things that came out of that I really honed in on was kind of, if things do happen, that it's not the person, or not to look at the person, but to look at the action and how do you deal with that. And I was like, whoa, like this is stuff, right? But it's when you hear it put that
Right.
way, it really drove the point home, and it gave me a different way to look at it too.
Was that Angelica's room?
It was the coolest room, actually. I was just a guest.
Okay. Yeah, and so let's talk briefly about Clubhouse, because this is like all of a sudden taken off in the people community like crazy. And I've been involved. I don't have my own club or room, but I've kind of tacked on and co-moderated. I don't know, co-moderated. But I think people from the outside looking in look at it as like, oh, that's just kind of a social networking. It's a waste of time. I will tell you, I sat there Friday afternoon. There was a half-hour session that Lars Schmidt ran on new HR technology. I took like 2 pages of notes because this is a passion of mine. It's something that I try. I have learned more in a few weeks of being on Clubhouse, and maybe 2 hours a week total, than I have in a year's worth of conferences. It's crazy. I'm curious what you're looking at it. Is it learning for you? Is it networking? Is it business building? How do you view Clubhouse?
It's a trio, right? It's all of the above. And that's why I love it. I am a lifelong learner. I'm a sponge when it comes to learning. And I think we all should be. We're all on a journey of learning. No one knows everything. That's why we have different experts, even within the HR discipline. So I think for me, I love to just sit and soak into a good conversation that's going to make me a better HR professional, a better business owner, that I can listen to what my market is saying and hear, how I can help solve problems for them. I can pop up a room just to help support people. And it's really been cool. There's a music room that I just love. It's like lo-fi beats, and I'm in there. Now I'm inching towards spending more time in other rooms, but that in the beginning for the first 2-3 weeks was like where I hung out, because it's great to work in and can have it on in the background, and just the number of people who connect with you on there, and then there's conversations that follow back to LinkedIn as well. And so it's building this HR community, it's building support for women, which I'm very passionate about, and just there's all sorts of different rooms. I love that it's pulling in a lot of diversity as well, and spaces for, I think what I'm seeing is people who maybe felt like they didn't have a voice before, they didn't have a platform, or folks who never spoke before. Now there's this stage and they can be on it, and they don't have to worry like, oh gosh, do I have a button undone on my blouse? Like but they can speak and they can be themselves, and they have this whole supportive community and room. And the empowerment is so, like, it just touches my heart.
I agree. I'm gonna get Michelle on there more.
I was just gonna say, okay, I'm on there. I just haven't really spent any time in there. I'm still trying to figure out how to invite people. So
it's an easy thing to fit in the spaces. If I have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I'll pop in here. I learned things about vaccines and things about leadership with Adam Grant. I had a day where I tweeted that I was in a Clubhouse with Adam Grant, and he liked it, and I almost died because I just love Adam Grant. And like Tiffany said, connecting with people. I met so many people that I didn't even know were out there, and I'm sure, other way, and that I'm continuing to learn from, which is pretty cool, which is really
Mhm.
pretty cool. So I think I'm trying to remember, Tiffany, how we first connected, but I think it was somehow around your Friday conversations. With Are you continuing those?
We are, yes.
Okay,
It's funny because it's called Continuing the Race Conversation, and they're Fridays at noon Eastern. It's a space Suman and I created it. She's my co-host, and we created it as a safe space after the Floyd murder, in order for people to be able to come, have a place to gather, talk. Initially, it really blossomed from us just checking in on each other. How are you doing? Because the emotional toll of that was just a lot. And so it was just like two friends checking in on each other. And then we said, people probably really need a way to open up a conversation. People are coming into work, they're deeply affected by this. How do we help be a part of a solution for people? Because it's a sticky subject. How do you bring that up as a leader? How do you even create space for that? Should you create space for it? And oh, there goes my earring. We're live.
that's okay. That's okay. You're got a new look. You're rocking a new look. I love it.
It's fashion trends here. And so we really, speaking of safe spaces, yeah, just, the ability to just be there. And so now every Friday, we have a guest, not every Friday, we do meet every Friday, but we don't always have a guest speaker. So twice a month we have a guest speaker. And then the other two, we just gather in community and do a round robin. What's on your mind? How are you feeling? And so that's been a really fun treat.
And those that I've only been able to attend part of a couple of them, but they've been fantastic. And you're really doing, you and Simon are doing a wonderful thing. And I'm glad to see that's continuing, even if I cannot make most of them, but I will try. Once I don't have a conflict, I will try.
No,
Where can they find those?
That is a great question that I should touch on. So there is a Zoom link that we can put, in the comments or something. I can
Great.
certainly to you both. And you register once, and you can register. It registers you for the whole series. So we also post a calendar every month of like who the speakers will be, so you can see if more topics resonate with you than others. But there's always also that safe space of the twice a month unrecorded that we just come and sit and talk. So.
Yeah, that's great. If you send the link, I'll sign up and join on Friday.
I love that. Thank you.
Okay.
So I just have one question because I know we're probably getting close on time. Tracy talked about managers, hiring managers or promoting managers to do dual roles, right? And it's not shocking. I've been hiring managers and promoting leaders and doing kind of the same thing, that they've just been really good individual contributors, or, we have a budgetary constraint and we can only hire one person, but we need a leader. We also need somebody to do stuff. And so how can HR professionals and the C-suite kind of carry the torch of, it's so important to separate that, right? And have what Tracy's doing now, have more leaders leading and spending their time developing and coaching and carrying the culture than kind of doing dual roles, because then they don't make time to coach and develop and do all that other stuff.
And that's such a great question, Michelle. I'm a huge advocate of all of us getting time for self-development, because that doesn't always happen, let's be honest, just like you just said, right? But it's so important because that you have to allow that space for people to be able to reach across the organization. And sometimes people get so wrapped up in leadership looking vertical, but there's job enrichment, there's all sorts of ways that you can help someone move into a leadership role. But I think a leader's role is really, there's nothing wrong with rolling up your sleeves sometimes. And I think that you have to also, the importance of allowing that development for your team while you're the visionary. You can certainly pull the team along within that, but if they're so busy in the weeds, how are they supposed to have time for the strategic piece? And we see this as HR professionals in our discipline where, we're pulled in so much of the tactical that we don't have time for the strategic. But if you really want to move your organization forward and your teams forward, you have to be able to have these leaders really be able to set the vision and to pull their team along with them, but that they're not micromanaging everything. And frankly, that's probably a source of disengagement for those leaders if they're expecting to be able to do more of the strategic side. Now, I've seen some leaders who, it's kind of self-inflicted where they've gotten too much into the weeds versus really doing the work. But that's where it's important to see what those skills are and to make sure you're putting the right people into leadership roles, because they may not be ready. They may just be comfortable with the technical piece, and they may not be
Right.
ready for leadership, to Tracy's earlier.
Right.
Mhm.
And maybe never. And that's okay. And that's
Right.
perfectly okay.
Mhm.
I was struck by something Nicole Roberts said in a Clubhouse room, was talking about her own leadership journey and how she was in a new role a number of years ago and asked her boss, well, why am I in meetings all day? That's all I do now. All I do is go to meetings. And her boss said to her, your role has changed. You're not an individual contributor. Your role is to lead people and to guide and coach and develop those people. And I think, I stepped back and went, whoa, because I can get in my own head sometimes and get mired down in my own work versus leading my team. Right. And so I think that was a really interesting way to look at it. But I think a lot of organizations still have a long way to go.
Mhm.
Yeah, especially right now, there's just a lot going on. So it's hard, and it's so easy to fall into that fate, especially I work with a lot of startups and nonprofits. And so when you're lean and mean, and one of my clients, their CFO is HR. And so sometimes it's out of necessity, but you have to be careful not to stay in that place for too long. You have to build toward growth. So, and it's tough. It really is.
Mhm.
Great. Well, this is a wonderful conversation. I wish we had another couple hours, but we're done.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
A little
it.
coffee chat. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Yes. Thanks for being here, Tiffany. That was great. Thank you.
Mhm.